Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking at the green and blue planet floating in the darkness of space. His yellow eyes studied the screens that showed him everything his scouts had learned about this world called Earth. The information made him smile, showing his sharp teeth. "Sir," said his second officer, walking up to him with a data pad. "The reports are all complete. This planet is perfect for our needs." Zethkar took the pad and read through the details. The humans living on Earth had only just figured out how to travel between stars, and even then, they could barely reach their own moon. Their technology was hundreds of years behind what the Vorthan Empire used. They had no space stations with weapons, no shields around their planet, and no real army in space. "What about their surface forces?" Zethkar asked. "Basic weapons, sir. They still use bullets and explosives. Their biggest ships float on water, not in space. They have flying machines, but nothing that could fight our ships." The officer paused. "There is one strange thing, though." "What?" "They fight each other all the time. Different groups of humans are always at war somewhere on their planet. They seem to enjoy fighting, but only with their own kind." Zethkar laughed. "Even better. A divided enemy is a weak enemy." He walked to the large window and looked out at Earth. "Tell me about their government." "They don't have one, sir. The planet is split into hundreds of different countries. Each one has its own leaders and armies. Sometimes they work together, but most of the time they argue and fight." This news made Zethkar very happy. In all his years as a commander, he had never found such an easy target. Most planets the Vorthan Empire conquered had strong defenses and united governments. This Earth would fall in less than a day. "What does the Galactic Council say about this world?" he asked. His intelligence officer, Veltar, stepped forward. She was smaller than most Vorthans, but her mind was sharp. "That's the strange part, sir. Earth is marked as forbidden in the old records, something called a Class 7 quarantine. The file says extreme caution advised, but it doesn't say why." "When was this quarantine put in place?" "Over 400 years ago, sir. The records are very old and hard to read. Most of the details are missing or damaged." Zethkar waved his hand dismissively. "Old fears from weak leaders. Look at this planet. What could possibly be dangerous about these primitive humans? They can't even leave their own solar system properly." He turned to address his full command crew. "Listen well. We have found the perfect target for our expansion. A rich planet with good water and air filled with resources we need. The inhabitants are primitive, divided, and have no real defenses. The old quarantine is clearly outdated nonsense from commanders who were too afraid to take risks." The crew cheered. They had been traveling through space for months, looking for a world to conquer. Their home planet was running out of room and resources. The Empire needed new territories, and Earth looked like it would be easy to take. "Veltar," Zethkar called. "Tell me more about human culture. What do they value? How do they think?" "They are very emotional, sir. They make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. They care about their families and their home regions more than anything else. They also seem to be very stubborn. Once they decide to do something, they rarely give up." "And their military tactics?" "Primitive but brutal, sir. They use simple strategies, but they don't seem to care about losses. In their wars, they often fight until one side is completely destroyed. They also use tricks and traps, hiding soldiers, and attacking from unexpected places." Zethkar nodded thoughtfully. "Desperate tactics from a desperate species. Still, we should be prepared for some resistance. How many ships do we have ready?" 300 warships, sir, plus support vessels. Over 50,000 warriors ready for ground combat." "Excellent. Begin preparations for invasion. I want every ship checked and every weapon charged. We'll give these humans one chance to surrender, peacefully. If they refuse, we'll show them the power of the Vorthan Empire." Far away on Earth, Dr. Lisa Parker sat in a small room filled with computers and screens. She worked for SETI, a group that listened for signals from space. For months, her team had been picking up strange radio transmissions from the edge of the solar system. They had worked day and night to understand the alien language, and now they knew what the messages meant. Lisa picked up a special phone that connected directly to the military. "General Carter, this is Dr. Parker at SETI. They're coming. The alien fleet we've been monitoring is preparing to attack." "Are you certain?" asked the voice on the other end. "Yes, sir. We've decoded enough of their communications to understand. Their plans. They think Earth is defenseless. They're planning a full invasion. How much time do we have? Based on their movement patterns, maybe 2 days. 3 at most." "Understood. Thank you, Doctor. You and your team have done excellent work." Lisa hung up the phone and looked around at her colleagues. They had been secretly listening to alien communications for years, learning about the different species in the galaxy. Most aliens seemed peaceful, but some, like these Vorthons, were conquerors looking for new worlds to control. She opened a secure computer file that contained everything they had learned about Vorthon military tactics, technology, and culture. This information had already been shared with military leaders around the world. Earth was ready. The Vorthons thought they were attacking a primitive, defenseless world. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this exact situation for decades. The fake signals that made Earth look backward, the hidden military installations, the secret space programs, everything was designed to make potential enemies underestimate what they were facing. As Zethkar prepared his invasion fleet, soldiers around the world were taking their positions. Deep underground bases came alive with activity. Hidden weapon systems powered up. Secret spaceships that had been disguised as research satellites began to move into position. The trap was set. The Vorthons were about to learn why the Galactic Council had marked Earth as forbidden territory. They were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that looks like prey. Earth was ready to show the galaxy why humanity had survived every challenge their dangerous planet had thrown at them. The Vorthons wanted a war, and they were about to get one, just not the kind they expected. The Vorthon invasion fleet came out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 300 massive warships appeared around Earth like a deadly metal cloud. Each ship was 3 times larger than anything humans had ever built, or so the Vorthons believed. Their dark hulls gleamed in the sunlight as they took positions around the blue and green planet. Commander Zethkar stood on his command bridge, feeling very pleased with himself. His ships surrounded Earth completely. No human vessel could escape, and no help could arrive. The conquest would be quick and clean. "Open a communication channel to the planet," he ordered. "Let's see how these primitive humans react when they realize their situation." The communication officer worked at his controls. "Channel open, sir." Zethkar straightened his uniform and put on his most intimidating expression. When he spoke, his voice was loud and commanding. "Attention, humans of Earth. I am Commander Zethkar of the Vorthon Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. You have one choice. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make your suffering last for days." For several moments there was silence. The Vorthon crew waited, expecting to hear panic and fear from the planet below. Instead, a calm human voice replied, "This is President Jake Morrison of the United Earth Coalition. Thank you for your message, Commander Zethkar. We appreciate you taking the time to visit our planet. However, we must respectfully decline your generous offer." The bridge fell silent. Several Vorthon officers looked at each other in confusion. The human had spoken as if he were declining an invitation to dinner, not facing the destruction of his entire planet. Zethkar's warriors began to laugh. "Did he just say thank you?" one of them asked. "These humans are even more primitive than we thought." "Sir," said the communication officer, "should I explain to them what will happen if they don't surrender?" "No," Zethkar replied, still chuckling. "Let them learn the hard way. All ships, prepare to fire. Target their largest cities and military bases." Across the fleet, weapon systems powered up. Massive plasma cannons and kinetic bombardment systems aimed at Earth's surface. The Vorthons had studied human settlements from space and identified what they thought were the most important targets. "All ships report ready, sir," announced the weapons officer. Fire. The space around Earth lit up as hundreds of energy beams and projectiles streaked toward the planet. Explosions bloomed across the continents as the Vorthon weapons struck their targets. Cities disappeared in balls of fire. Military bases were turned into smoking craters. Airports and space centers were completely destroyed. Zethkar watched the destruction with satisfaction. Scan for survivors. Let's see how defiant they are now. But something was wrong. The sensor operator stared at his screens with a confused expression. Sir, I'm not reading any casualties. What do you mean? The life sign detectors show no significant population decrease. It's as if the cities were empty when we hit them. That's impossible. Rerun the scans. The sensor operator worked frantically at his controls. Sir, the readings are correct. Also, I'm detecting massive underground complexes beneath every target we hit. The buildings we destroyed appear to have been decoys. Before Zethkar could process this information, warning alarms began screaming throughout his ship. Red lights flashed as the tactical display showed new contacts appearing everywhere. Sir, shouted the tactical officer, multiple contacts rising from the planet's surface, more contacts emerging from the oceans, unknown vessels decloaking all around our fleet. Zethkar stared at his display screen in disbelief. Thousands of human ships were appearing as if from nowhere. They rose from underwater bases he never knew existed. They uncloaked from positions where they had been hiding, invisible, for hours. They emerged from underground launch facilities that his sensors had completely missed. The ships were nothing like what his intelligence reports had described. These weren't primitive vessels that could barely reach the moon. These were advanced warships with technology that looked almost as sophisticated as Vorthon designs. How is this possible? Zethkar whispered. A new voice came over the communication system. This one belonged to a human woman, and she sounded confident and professional. Welcome to Earth, Commander Zethkar. I'm Admiral Kate Sullivan of the United Earth Defense Force. I hope you're ready for a proper introduction to humanity. This is impossible, Zethkar shouted into his communicator. Our scouts observed your planet for months. You have no advanced technology, no space navy, no unified government. You're absolutely right, Commander, replied Admiral Sullivan. We wanted you to see exactly what you expected to see. Did you really think a species that survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and thousands of years of warfare would be defenseless? Another human voice joined the conversation. Commander Zethkar, this is Colonel Amy Watson. I'm curious, did your intelligence reports mention that humans have been listening to your communications for the past 6 months? We've learned your language, studied your tactics, and prepared specifically for this moment. Zethkar's intelligence officer, Veltar, was frantically checking her data. Sir, the cultural analysis was wrong. These humans weren't fighting primitive wars among themselves. They were practicing. Every conflict on their planet was training for something like this. The tactical situation was becoming worse by the minute. Human ships were moving in patterns that confused Vorthon targeting systems. They didn't follow the standard formation flying that civilized species used. Instead, they moved like a pack of predators, coordinating their attacks in ways that seemed random but were devastatingly effective. Sir, reported the sensor officer, I'm detecting massive weapons platforms rising from their moon. Hidden bases throughout their asteroid belt are activating. Even their space stations that looked like research facilities are rotating to reveal weapon arrays. Captain Steve Rogers, commanding a human stealth ship, appeared on their communication screen. He was smiling, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Every military base you destroyed was a fake, Commander. Every city you hit was evacuated weeks ago when we first detected your scout ships. Our real infrastructure has been underground since something called the Cold War. We've been preparing for visitors like you for over 60 years. Zethkar felt his confidence crumbling as the full scope of human deception became clear. Earth wasn't a primitive, defenseless world. It was the most heavily fortified planet he had ever encountered. Everything they had seen from space had been carefully designed to make potential enemies underestimate what they were facing. Impossible, he muttered. The Galactic Council quarantine. It wasn't to protect you from us. That's right, Commander, said Admiral Sullivan. It was to protect the galaxy from us. or more specifically, to protect species like yours from making exactly the mistake you just made. The human fleet was now completely surrounding the Vorthons. What had seemed like an easy conquest had become a nightmare scenario. Zethkar realized that his invasion force was trapped, outnumbered, and facing an enemy that had been preparing for this exact situation for decades. "Sir," whispered his second officer, "what are your orders?" Zethkar stared at the tactical display, watching human ships move with the precision of a perfectly coordinated hunting pack. For the first time in his military career, he had no idea what to do. The Vorthon fleet found themselves in the middle of a nightmare. Human ships surrounded them on all sides, having appeared from places the aliens never thought to look. Zethkar watched his tactical screens with growing horror as more and more human vessels revealed themselves. Dr. Kevin Hayes sat in a command center buried 3 miles beneath the Nevada desert. Around him, dozens of technicians monitored the alien fleet's communications. For months, they had been listening to every Vorthon transmission, learning not just their language but their culture, their fears, and their military weaknesses. "Colonel Watson," Dr. Hayes spoke into his communicator, "the Vorthons are trying to contact their home fleet for reinforcements. Should we jam their signals?" "Not yet," replied Colonel Amy Watson from her command ship in space. "Let them call for help. I want their entire empire to hear what happens next." On the main Vorthon ship, Zethkar was receiving reports that made no sense. His sensor officer kept announcing new human vessels appearing from impossible locations. "Sir, massive battleships are rising from the ocean floors. The humans have entire naval bases underwater. More contacts from the lunar surface, sir. The moon appears to be completely militarized. Commander, we're detecting movement in the asteroid belt. What we thought were mining operations are actually forward military bases." Veltar, the intelligence officer, worked frantically at her station. "Sir, I'm analyzing the human communications. They've been planning this for decades. Every piece of information we gathered was deliberately false. They wanted us to attack. Why would they want that?" Zethkar demanded. Before Veltar could answer, a new human voice came over the communication system. This one belonged to an older man who spoke with calm authority. "Commander Zethkar, this is General Ben Carter of NORAD. I think it's time. We had an honest conversation about what you've gotten yourself into." "What trickery is this?" Zethkar shouted. "No species develops this level of deception." "You're wrong about that," General Carter replied. "Let me explain something about human history. We've been fighting wars on this planet for thousands of years. Not just against each other, but against everything our world could throw at us. Ice ages that lasted for thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. Asteroid impacts that killed most life on the planet. Disease outbreaks that wiped out entire civilizations." Captain Drew Mitchell, piloting a human fighter squadron, added his voice to the conversation. "We didn't develop space travel because we were curious about the universe, Commander. We developed it because we assumed something out there wanted to kill us, and we needed to be ready." Zethkar looked at his tactical display. The human ships weren't just surrounding his fleet. They were moving in complex patterns that seemed to serve no military purpose. Then he realized what he was seeing. The humans weren't just positioned to attack. They were positioned to capture his entire fleet without destroying it. "They're not trying to kill us," he whispered to his crew. "They want to take us alive." Dr. Rachel Green, monitoring the battle from the Lunar Command Center, confirmed his suspicions. "That's correct, Commander. We don't destroy our enemies if we can avoid it. We study them, we learn from them, and then we prepare for the next ones who might try the same thing." The scope of human preparation was becoming clearer with every passing minute. Captain Helen Brooks, commanding the submarine fleet, revealed another aspect of Earth's defenses that the Vorthons had never considered. "Our underwater bases have been operational since the 1960s, Commander. We've had nuclear submarines capable of launching attacks on space targets for over 60 years. Did your intelligence reports mention that Earth's oceans cover 70% of the planet's surface?" The answer was no. The Vorthons, coming from a desert world, had focused on the land masses and ignored the vast bodies of water that covered most of Earth. They had never imagined that an entire military force could be hidden beneath the waves. Tau. Colonel Ryan Adams, coordinating the fighter operations, provided more disturbing news. Commander, your ship's designs are based on fighting other space-based civilizations. But humans developed our space combat tactics by adapting our Air Force strategies. We don't fight in neat formations, we fight like predators hunting in packs. This explained why the human ships moved in patterns that confused Vorthon targeting systems. They weren't following civilized rules of space combat. They were following tactics developed by creatures that had spent millions of years learning to hunt and kill more powerful opponents. Commander Nancy Davis, who had been in charge of the deception operations, delivered the most shocking revelation. Commander Zethkar, did you know that your scout ships were detected the moment they entered our solar system? We've been feeding them false information for months. Every primitive transmission they intercepted was carefully crafted to make you think we were weak and divided. The communications equipment on Zethkar's ship crackled with another voice. President Jake Morrison spoke from his secure bunker beneath Washington, D.C. The truth is, Commander, humanity united under a single government over 30 years ago. We maintain the appearance of separate countries for cultural reasons, but when it comes to defending our planet, we speak with one voice. That voice is telling you that you made a terrible mistake. Zethkar felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career: complete helplessness. His invasion fleet was trapped, surrounded, and outmaneuvered by an enemy that had been preparing for this exact scenario since before he was born. How? He asked weakly. How did you know we would come? Dr. Lisa Parker, whose SETI program had been monitoring alien communications for decades, answered from her facility in California. Because you're not the first, Commander. Over the past 400 years, 12 different alien species have looked at Earth and decided we were easy targets. The Altarians, the Zephyrian Empire, the Helix Consortium, and 9 others. What happened to them? They're all still alive, Commander. They're working for us now. Turns out most species are much happier when they're not trying to maintain galactic empires through conquest. The Altarians are helping us mine asteroids. The Zephyrians are establishing trade routes. The Helix are working on our deep space exploration programs. The full horror of the situation hit Zethkar like a physical blow. Earth wasn't just defended, it was a trap. The entire planet was designed to look weak and tempting to would-be conquerors, and when they took the bait, humanity would demonstrate exactly why the Galactic Council had warned everyone to stay away. The quarantine, he whispered, was established after the first few species disappeared, confirmed Admiral Sullivan. The Galactic Council realized that Earth wasn't defenseless because we were primitive. Earth appeared defenseless because we wanted to see who would be stupid enough to attack a planet that every other civilization had learned to avoid. As the reality of his situation sank in, Zethkar understood that he wasn't facing a primitive species that had gotten lucky. He was facing the apex predators of their world, creatures that had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to kill things that were bigger, stronger, and better armed than they were. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapon, and they had made it look like a target. What happened next wasn't really a battle at all. It was a lesson in how humans fought wars, and it terrified the Vorthons more than any direct attack could have. The human ships didn't charge forward in glorious combat like civilized species did. Instead, they moved like hunters that had been stalking their prey for hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Every movement was calculated, every position chosen for maximum advantage. Captain Drew Mitchell led a squadron of human fighters that moved in ways the Vorthons had never seen before. Instead of flying in straight lines and neat formations, the human pilots twisted and rolled through space in patterns that looked completely random, but somehow avoided every shot the aliens fired at them. How are they moving like that? Demanded Zethkar, watching his weapons officer struggle to target the human fighters. Sir, replied the weapons officer, their flight patterns don't follow any known combat doctrine. They seem to be flying like wild animals avoiding a predator. That was exactly what they were doing. Human pilots had learned their skills by studying birds of prey, school of fish, and pack hunters. They didn't fly like machines programmed for combat. They flew like living creatures that had spent millions of years learning not to get caught and killed. General Pete Thompson coordinated the overall human response from his command center deep inside Cheyenne Mountain. His strategy was simple: disable every Vorthon ship without destroying them, capture as many aliens as possible alive, and do it all without losing a single human life. All units, he announced over the communication system, remember the rules of engagement. Target weapons and engines only. We want prisoners, not corpses. This approach confused the Vorthons even more. In their culture, warfare was about honor and glory. You destroyed your enemies completely, or you died trying. The idea of deliberately avoiding casualties while systematically dismantling an entire fleet was beyond their understanding. Commander Helen Brooks, leading the submarine fleet from the depths of the Pacific Ocean, demonstrated another aspect of human warfare that the aliens found disturbing. Her underwater vessels could stay hidden for months, moving through Earth's oceans without detection, striking targets anywhere on the planet or in near-Earth space. Commander Zethkar, she broadcast on an open channel, your species comes from a desert world, doesn't it? You've never learned to think in 3 dimensions the way ocean predators do. You can't hide from something that already knows where you are. The concept of underwater spacecraft bases was so foreign to the desert-dwelling Vorthons that they struggled to understand how it was even possible. On their homeworld, water was precious and rare. The idea that humans could build entire military installations beneath vast bodies of water had never occurred to them. Dr. Rachel Green, monitoring the battle from the heavily armed lunar installations, provided real-time intelligence that revealed another human advantage. We've been studying your technology through the communications our scouts intercepted. Every weapon system in your fleet has a specific weakness, and we've developed countermeasures for all of them. This was the most frightening revelation yet. The humans hadn't just been preparing for a generic alien invasion. They had been preparing specifically for the Vorthons, learning their tactics, understanding their technology, and developing weapons designed to exploit their particular weaknesses. Colonel Ryan Adams, directing the fighter operations, explained the human military philosophy in simple terms. We don't fight fair, Commander. Fair fights are for sporting events. This is about survival, and survival means using every advantage you can find. The human approach to combat was based on a simple assumption. Every enemy was stronger, better, armed, and more numerous than they were. So they prepared accordingly. They used stealth, deception, superior positioning, and detailed knowledge of their opponent's weaknesses to win battles before the fighting even started. As the hours passed, the Vorthon fleet found itself being systematically dismantled. Human ships appeared from impossible angles, fired precisely targeted shots that disabled weapons and engines, then disappeared before the aliens could return fire. It was like being attacked by ghosts. "Sir," reported Veltar, the intelligence officer, "I'm beginning to understand their strategy. They're not trying to defeat us in honorable combat. They're treating us like dangerous animals that need to be captured safely." Captain Steve Rogers, commanding one of the human stealth destroyers, confirmed this analysis. "That's exactly right. We approach every conflict assuming our opponent is more dangerous than we are. So we prepare more thoroughly, fight more cleverly, and make sure we have every possible advantage before we engage." The psychological impact of this approach was devastating to Vorthon morale. They had been trained to fight enemies who met them in direct combat. Being systematically hunted by opponents they could barely see was breaking down their confidence and discipline. Commander Nancy Davis, who had planned the entire deception operation, revealed the scope of human preparation. "Commander, we've been ready for this specific scenario for over 40 years. Every human child learns in school about the possibility of alien invasion. Every military officer trains for asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. Our entire civilization is organized around the principle that something out there might try to kill us all." This was the key difference between humans and other species the Vorthons had encountered. Most civilizations developed space travel through peaceful exploration and scientific curiosity. Humans had developed it because they assumed the universe, was trying to kill them, and they needed to be ready to fight back. Dr. Kevin Hayes, coordinating intelligence operations from his underground facility, provided more disturbing details about human military doctrine. We study every species we encounter, Commander. We learn their psychology, their technology, their cultural weaknesses. Then we prepare specific strategies for defeating them if they ever become hostile. The idea that humans had detailed battle plans for fighting species they had never actually encountered was deeply unsettling to the Vorthans. It suggested a level of paranoid preparation that went far beyond normal military planning. President Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system again, speaking from his secure location. The truth is, Commander, we're not naturally aggressive. We're naturally defensive. Everything you're seeing today is the result of a species that spent its entire evolutionary history assuming something bigger and stronger was trying to eat it. As more Vorthon ships lost power and drifted helplessly in space, Zethkar began to understand what he was really facing. These weren't primitive warriors who had gotten lucky. These were the ultimate survivors, creatures that had turned defensive preparation into an art form. How many species have tried to conquer your planet? He asked weakly. Admiral Kate Sullivan answered from her flagship. You're number 13, Commander, and like the 12 before you, you're about to learn that the most dangerous predator is often the one that looks like prey. The battle was over before it had really begun. The mighty Vorthon invasion force had been reduced to a collection of disabled ships drifting in Earth's gravity well, their crews awaiting whatever fate humanity had planned for them. 6 hours after the invasion began, the entire Vorthon fleet was disabled and under human control. Not a single alien ship had been destroyed, and not one human life had been lost. Commander Zethkar found himself sitting in a comfortable chair aboard a human vessel facing the beings who had just demonstrated why his species should have listened to the ancient warnings. The room was surprisingly pleasant. The humans had provided food, water, and medical care for their prisoners. This confused Zethkar more than anything else that had happened. In Vorthon culture, captured enemies were either killed or enslaved. The idea of treating prisoners well was completely foreign to him. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat across from him at a simple metal table. She looked tired but not angry. Her manner was professional, like someone conducting a business meeting rather than dealing with a defeated enemy. Imagine you have questions, Commander, she said calmly. Why are we still alive? Zethkar asked. In any civilized war, we would have been executed by now. Admiral Sullivan smiled slightly. That's your first mistake, Commander. You assume war is civilized. Humans learned a long time ago that war is about survival, not honor. And sometimes, surviving means turning your enemies into allies. Dr. Chris Morgan, Earth's chief xenobiologist, entered the room carrying a datapad. Commander Zethkar, I've been studying Vorthon culture for the past 6 months. Your species has been conquering other worlds for over 500 years, correct? Yes, Zethkar replied warily. How many of those conquered species are still fighting against you? The question caught Zethkar off guard. All of them, to some degree. Rebellions are a constant problem throughout the Empire. That's because conquest through force creates enemies, not subjects, Dr. Morgan explained. Humans learned this lesson thousands of years ago. If you want lasting peace, you need to give people reasons to cooperate with you, not just reasons to fear you. Captain Nancy Davis joined the conversation. Let me show you something, Commander. She activated a holographic display that showed star maps of various regions of space. These are the territories controlled by the 12 alien species that tried to conquer Earth before you. The display showed vast areas of space that had once belonged to aggressive empires but were now marked with different symbols. What happened to them? Zethkar asked. They still exist, Captain Davis replied, but they're no longer empires, based on conquest. The Altarians now run the most efficient mining operations in 3 star systems. The Zephyrians have established trade networks that span half the galaxy. The Helix Consortium has become the leading deep space exploration group in known space. You enslaved them? No, Commander. We offered them something better than conquest. Partnership. It turns out that most species are much happier and more productive when they're working toward common goals, instead of fighting to maintain control over unwilling subjects. General Ben Carter appeared on a communication screen. From Earth. The key insight, Commander, is that building an empire through force is inefficient. It requires constant military action to suppress rebellions. It wastes resources on control that could be used for production, and it makes enemies out of people who could be valuable allies. Zethkar struggled to understand this concept. But how do you maintain order without fear? How do you ensure loyalty? By making cooperation more attractive than resistance, Admiral Sullivan replied. The Altarians joined our mining operations because we offered them better technology and higher profits than they could achieve on their own. The Zephyrians became our trade partners because we helped them develop routes that were more efficient than anything they had before. Dr. Lisa Parker, whose SETI program had been monitoring alien communications for decades, added her perspective via hologram. Commander, your empire spans dozens of star systems, but how much of your resources are dedicated to controlling rebellions, suppressing uprisings, and maintaining military forces to keep your subjects in line? The answer was deeply uncomfortable. Nearly 70% of the Vorthon Empire's resources went to military activities designed to control their own territory. Only 30% was available for actual development and improvement of life for their citizens. Now compare that to our approach, Dr. Parker continued. The species that work with us contribute their knowledge and capabilities to mutual benefit. The Altarians' mining expertise helps us develop resources more efficiently. The Zephyrian trade networks give us access to materials and markets we never could have reached alone. Everyone benefits more than they would have individually. President Jake Morrison appeared on screen from the rebuilt White House. We're offering you the same choice, Commander. The Vorthon Empire can continue trying to maintain control through force, spending most of your resources on military suppression and making enemies of everyone you encounter. Or you can join the growing alliance of species that have discovered cooperation is more profitable than conquest. What about our military? Zethkar asked. Our warriors? What happens to them? They become explorers, researchers, and protectors, replied Admiral Sullivan. The galaxy is a big place with many mysteries and dangers. We need skilled people to investigate new phenomena, contact unknown species, and defend against genuine threats. Your military experience would be invaluable for these missions. Commander Helen Brooks, speaking from her underwater command center, provided a practical example. 3 months ago, we encountered a species called the Nexari. They weren't hostile, but they were afraid of us because they had heard rumors about the dangerous humans. It took a team of former Zephyrian warriors working as our diplomatic escorts to convince the Nexari that we meant no harm. Their presence proved that we could work peacefully with other species. The scope of what the humans were offering began to sink in. Instead of being executed or enslaved, the Vorthons were being invited to join an alliance that spanned multiple star systems and included dozens of different species, all working together for mutual benefit. Why? Zethkar asked quietly. Why offer this to us after we attacked you? Because we understand why you attacked, President Morrison replied. Your empire is failing. Your resources are running out. Your people are suffering under the burden of maintaining control over unwilling subjects. You came here looking for a solution to your problems. We're offering you a real solution, just not the one you expected. Dr. Rachel Green, monitoring from the lunar installations, provided the final piece of the puzzle. The Galactic Council established the quarantine around Earth not to protect us from alien contact, but to prevent incidents like this. They knew that aggressive species would see our apparent weakness as an opportunity and attack us. They wanted to give those species time to mature and become less violent before making contact. But some species, like yours, ignore the quarantine, Admiral Sullivan added. So we developed this system. Let them attack what they think is a defenseless target, demonstrate that cooperation is more effective than conquest, then offer them a chance to join the galactic community as partners instead of enemies. Zethkar looked around the room at the humans who had just defeated his entire invasion force without firing a shot in anger. They weren't celebrating their victory or gloating over their prisoners. They were offering genuine partnership to people who had come to destroy their world. How do I know this isn't a trick? He asked. Because we're sending you home, Commander, Admiral Sullivan replied. You and your entire fleet. We're giving you repaired ships, updated star charts, and communication equipment that will let you stay in contact with us. You can report everything you've seen here to your government and let them decide what to do next. And if we choose to remain an empire based on conquest, then you'll continue to face the same problems you've always had. Rebellions, resource shortages, and constant warfare. But now you'll also face the knowledge that there's a better way to live, and some of your people will start demanding it. As Zethkar was escorted back to his repaired ship, he realized that the humans had given him something more dangerous than any weapon. Hope. The idea that his people could be prosperous without being conquerors, that they could be respected without being feared, was going to spread through the Empire like wildfire. The message he would carry back to Vorthan space would change everything. Earth wasn't defenseless because its people were weak. Earth appeared defenseless because they wanted to identify aggressive species and offer them a chance to become something better. In the final transmission sent to the Vorthan fleet as they prepared to leave Earth's solar system, Admiral Sullivan's words were simple but clear. The galaxy is big enough for all of us, Commander, but it's much more interesting when we work together to explore it. The newest chapter in galactic history had begun, and it started with the simple idea that the Mayo strongest defense wasn't weapons or walls but the willingness to turn enemies into friends.